والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, we're studying the book of مختصر منهاج القاصدين, and the book deals with mainly with purification of the heart, manners, etiquettes, and this is definitely an essential part of our deen. We can look into the deen of Islam from the perspective of purification. It's half of the deen. As the Prophet ﷺ said, الطهور شطر الإيمان. Purification is half of an iman. Physical purification, to purify ourselves to be able to establish the salah, and to purify ourselves physically, this is part of the deen, and also purification of one's soul, one's heart, from shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sins in general, the sinful acts that is done by the heart. This is something that is essential, of course, in matters of the deen. So half of the iman is to clean, and the other half is to accumulate the obligations and the good deeds and so on. So as a result of that, this is something that is mandatory for every Muslim to learn and to take the means and the effort to establish this and to do this in our life, so that when a person dies, he dies in a state of complete purification. Because if there's any small contamination, any small impurities, when a person dies with this impurity as a Muslim, that means his iman is not complete, his iman is deficient. And that means either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him, or if he's punished, and then he will enter Jannah, but it's a dangerous thing. That's why our job in this life is to make sure that we are at any moment absolutely 100% clean. And how can we do that? By the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fulfilling the obligations, while staying of course from the sins and the bad deeds, and taking all of these means with repentance, with the tawbah. The tawbah is an essential means to this whatsoever, because no matter what we do, we still will be deficient. So the tawbah and the constant repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the person always in state of clean and purifications of one's soul and so on. Last time, the first thing he talked about is the virtue of al-ilm, the knowledge, and how this is the most valuable thing for a person to seek. And then after that, he talked about the virtues of the people of knowledge and those who are seekers of knowledge and so on. But then after that, the next chapter, the title of it is طلب العلم فريضة. Seeking knowledge is فريضة, is an obligation, with some details. And what does it mean by saying that seeking knowledge is an obligatory act? He says, روي عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. رواه أحمد في العلل. This hadith, and it's a sound hadith, not that specific narration, but with other narrations it's a sound hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ said that seeking knowledge is faridah, is fard on every Muslim. Is fard on every Muslim. And what does that mean? Because as we know that it's not mandatory for every Muslim to seek the knowledge in the way that everybody becomes ulama, right? It doesn't work this way. But what is meant by the faridah part of the ilm? There's a portion of the ilm that is fard, obligatory on every Muslim. That means if a person doesn't have this knowledge, he is not fulfilling the obligations, which is a sinful act. So what is this? He said that the ulama, they had talked about this matter. The fuqaha, for example, the people of knowledge, the ulama of matters of fiqh, matters of halal and haram, they said هو علم الفقه, به يعرف الحلال والحرام. They said it's the knowledge of al-fiqh to know what is halal and what is haram. And having this knowledge, or to have a person of knowledge that a person would ask him, اسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. But to always have the excuse that I don't know, and a person would do what is haram because he doesn't know, then this is not something that a Muslim have. The concern of the deen should always fall into this. He should learn what is halal and what is haram. And if the knowledge is not there, then the person should ask the people of knowledge. And the person has to prepare himself if he wants to know the halal and the haram, that the halal and the haram might not, or for the most part, is not what you think or what I think, or what we might see that is very obvious or not obvious. It doesn't go this way. It's known from the wahy, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتُكُمُ الْكَذِبَ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ. Those who say this is halal, this is haram, they're saying lies against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not for us to say that, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we have to have that submission to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. He says, وَقَالَ الْمُفَسِّرُونَ وَالْمُحَدِّثُونَ, the people of the tafsir of the Quran and the narrators of the hadith, they said, هو علم الكتاب والسنة إذ بهما يتوصل إلى العلوم كلها. It's the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, because the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, the whole types of knowledge is taught, and for a person to learn it through the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Some said it's علم الإخلاص وآفات النفوس, it's the knowledge of sincerity and the diseases of the hearts for a person to cure himself from it. And people said things, right? Even philosophers, they would say it's philosophy, right? This is a knowledge that everybody should have. So people say many things, right? And that's what he says, إلى غير ذلك من الأقوال التي ليس فيها قول مرضي. And many different things, right? But then he gives a specific terminology here. He says what is correct is he called it علم معاملة العبد لربه. It's the knowledge of how the slave of Allah, معاملة العبد لربه, that how he worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically, how he worship his Lord. But this mu'amala, or this relationship, is of three types. اعتقاد وفعل وترك. It's belief and actions, and tark is some things to be left, not to be done. The action and the opposite of action is to stay away from something. So matters of belief and actions to be done, and things to be forbidden, or things for a person to stay away from. And as you see, this is something that can bring the whole deen of Islam in these three categories. Al-i'tiqad, matters of belief, of course, comes first. And fi'l wa tark, the actions and to leave something. When we say actions, right, we should stay away from what comes first into our minds is physical actions, that's it. No, this is part of the action, right? Because we're having actions done by the heart. The heart do actions. What's the acts of the heart? The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fear of Allah, the sincerity, al-ikhlas, al-rida, to be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. So these are deeds, actions. The heart do certain things, right? Which is different than al-i'tiqad, or matters of belief, which is also the place of it is the heart. Our speech are actions. And when people don't consider their speech actions, they are in big trouble, right? Every word, we are responsible for it. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. And whoever counts his speech, his words from his actions, then he will speak accordingly, right? So every word we say, we're responsible. So our speech, right, it's part of the action and the physical actions. By the hand, by the leg, by the eyes, by the ears. Everything in us will be basically responsible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything in our body to fulfill only one thing, and that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So everything has to be fulfilling that purpose. So part of this is obligation. And then he mentioned some examples. فإذا بلغ الصبي فأول واجب عليه تعلم كلمتي الشهادة وفهم معناها وإن لم يحصل ذلك بالنظر والدليل لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم اكتفى من أجلاف العرب بالتصديق من غير تعلم دليل فذلك فرض الوقت ثم يجب عليه النظر والاستدلال. الكلام طبعا في نظر هذا كما يعني يقال من أقوال المتكلمين والفلاسفة. يعني خلاصة الكلام, and what is right is when a young boy reaches the age of purity. The age of purity is the age of a taklif. Before that, he's not mukallaf. He's not, if he dies before that, there is no punishment for him or for her. But once he reached the age of puberty, right, then it's obligatory for him to know at that day that he reached that age, on that day it's mandatory for him to know the Shahadatain, to know La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, what that means, right, and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and so on. But if you wait till the day comes and you start teaching him, this can be very difficult, right, and might be with the fitan and so on, and that's what, when they say it's awwal wajib, they don't mean that it's not something to be taught from before. No, it means it becomes obligatory on him on that day, right? But before that, it's obligatory on who? Not on him, because he's not responsible for his actions. It's obligatory on his parents or his guardian to teach him. And this is a very important point. Prophet ﷺ said, "Muru awladakum bis-salati wa hum abna'u sab'a." Order your children to make salah when they're 7 years old. وَضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا هُمْ أَبْنَاءُ عَشْرٍ, and punish them, smack them, whatever, right? If they are 10 years old and they're not making salah. That means what? 7 and 10 even, most likely they are not in the age of puberty yet. They're not responsible for their actions yet. But there is punishment here if they would miss the salah. 7 years old, you order them. That means, muru means that you order them, that means they don't have a choice. It's not an optional thing. You feel bad for him, don't wake him up. No, that's it. Fajr, Dhuhr, Maghrib, every salah is to pray on time. Of course, it's a nice way. And the child, when he's 7 years old, he loves it so much, right? Because he feels like he's now grown up and he's with the father or the girl with the mother. There is no resistance whatsoever when they're 7, especially if it's done in the right way. Before that, you don't order them. They do it, they imitate their parents and so on. But once, if they're doing it from 7 years old, every salah, who's responsible? Is, as the Prophet ﷺ said, he's talking to who? To those who are responsible for the children, their guardians, their parents, and so on. And if the parents do not do this, that means they're disobeying the order of the Prophet ﷺ. So the sinful one here, if they don't do it, is the parents and not the child. When they're 10 years old, if for 3 years they've been making the salah, every salah on time with the parents, then there's no excuse after 3 years. إذا تم الولد العشر أو البنت فلا عذر له. He does not have an excuse because it's part of his system, right? He cannot skip it whatsoever. So if he skips it, then there's for him to be punished, because he should know better now. Now he has the ability to think, although he's not yet responsible for his actions, but it's a way of tarbiyah and upbringing. So that once they reach the age of puberty, right, the matter becomes, this is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you help the child, so that because this child, if he reaches the age of puberty and he dies that day, either he will enter Jannah or the hellfire. So the matter is a very serious one. That's why the tarbiyah and upbringing of the children is a very serious one. And the parents have, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us from our shortcomings. So, what's the first wajib on the human beings to know? The first wajib, the most important obligatory, La ilaha illallah. To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Some, people would say, is to look and to ponder over the creation of Allah. Is to think of this. No. The first wajib is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. To know that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the wajib that other prophets, they called the people to do. And the understanding of the meaning of it and so on. Then he says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَقْتُ الصَّلَاةِ وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِ تَعَلُّمُ الطَّهَارَةِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. The time for the salah comes and he reaches the age of puberty, wajab. And we have to understand, it's not, again, that it means that he's not been neglected all of his life. No, it becomes wajib on him, right? Because now he's mukallaf. He's responsible for his actions. So it's mandatory on him, right, that he would, if he didn't learn, nobody taught him the rules of the tahara, purification and salah, there's no fault on him. The fault on those who did not teach him. But then it becomes obligatory on him, and he has no excuse, because now he reached the age of taklif, where he's responsible. He has to, if he doesn't have the knowledge, then this is a mandatory knowledge for him, to learn how to purify himself physically and to make salah. فَإِذَا عَاشَ إِلَى رَمَضَانِ. If he lived till Ramadan, وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِ تَعَلُّمُ الصَّوْمِ. Then he has to, mandatory for him to learn how to fast. فإن كان له مال, if he has money, وحال عليه الحول, and whole year, Hijri year passed, and this money is reached the nisab with the zakah, وجب عليه تعلم الزكاة. Right? He has to learn the rulings of the zakah. وإن جاء وقت الحج, and if the time of Hajj comes, وهو مستطيع, and he's capable, right? 15 years old, 14 years old, he's capable, he has money, right? وجب عليه تعلم المناسك, he has to learn how to make the manasik, the rituals of Hajj, because he has to go for Hajj. Of course, if the unfortunate thing is in the world that we live in today, the men are called babies till they're 18 years old. Right? What can you do? Or sometimes 21. There are men, right, beards and everything, and one of them, his beard might be that long, but he's called a child. He's not responsible for his actions. He can do whatever he wants, right, till he's 18 years old. And this is against how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. In Islam, no. Right? In Islam, it's all about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. A child, if it's a girl, she's ready to give birth at a certain age. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created her this way. But, man-made ideas and rules and regulations and everything like that, they deal with the human beings differently. Although, there's something in the deen also very important. It's not just about the age. They also have to reach the age where they are responsible for their actions. In the sense, not the responsible methods of worship. They have to have means of rashad, that means they can make decisions. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ. That means that test the orphans when they reach the age of puberty. If they reach the age of puberty, you don't just give them their money. It's their money, and they're responsible for their actions. But you have to test them to make sure that they are responsible, they have the proper thinking. And if people are being raised to be children, right, they might reach the age of puberty, but they still think like children. And that's what most of the cases are. So they're not really responsible. They cannot spend their money wisely. They cannot get married and have children because they'll divorce the next day. Things like this. So they have to be having the ability to make decisions and so on. But as far as the responsibilities with matters of worship, they are responsible. And the same thing with all that is obligatory. If he starts to buy and sell, then he has to know the rulings of buying and selling. So this becomes mandatory knowledge, or he has to ask the people of knowledge. Then he says, وَأَمَّا التُّرُوكِ. As for the things to be forbidden, or for a person to leave and not to apply, فَهُوَ بِحَسَبِ مَا يَتَجَدَّدُ مِنَ الْأَحْوَالِ. It's according to what comes from the situations that a person is facing. As he says, إِذْ لَا يَجِبُ عَلَى الْأَعْمَى تَعَلُّمِ مَا يَحْرُمُ النَّظَرِ إِلَيْهِ. The blind person, he doesn't have to learn what's forbidden for him to look at, because he won't be able to see it anyway. So it's not mandatory knowledge for him. وَلَا عَلَى الْأَبْكَمِ تَعَلُّمِ مَا يَحْرُمُ مِنَ الْكَلَامِ. And the mute, right, he doesn't have to learn what's haram with matters of speech. He does not speak, right? Although he should learn this, right, so that he does not have bad intentions. If he would say, if I have the ability to speak, I would just, abuse people left and right. Or if I have eyes, I would, So that means he has to have the knowledge so that he can make sure that his intentions also are straight. But this is not necessarily the first or the most important thing for him to know then. قل فإن كان في بلد يتعاطى فيه شرب الخمر ولبس الحرير وجب عليه أن يعرف تحريم ذلك, which is a very important point. What needs for the person to learn and priorities of halal and haram, it depends on where the person is and what each person is different from the other. So if he lives in a place, a country or so, where people they drink wine and alcohol and they wear silk for men, then it's mandatory for him to know that this is haram. So the children that are living here in America, right, if they reach the age of puberty or before that, right, then the things for them to know might be different than the things that people or children are raised in another country. Why? Because it depends on what they are exposed to, right? Dealing with, talking about zina and how haram it is and all the means to zina, people never talk to their children about this, out of shyness or whatever there is. They think if they do that, they will get them to mamnu' marghub, or what is forbidden is more to be desired. But if they're exposed to this, if they go to school, for example, or something like that, and the parents don't say anything, then this is very dangerous. The same thing with anything that are exposed to, like as he mentioned here, drinking, things that is haram, then they have to learn what is right and what is wrong. وأما الاعتقادات, as for the matters of belief, then of course it has to be taught, and like the pillars of al-Iman and matters of the belief has to be taught in general, and then step by step all the details and everything. And then also, وإن كان في بلد قد كثرت فيه البدع, if he's in a town or a country, so much bid'ah in it, so much innovations in matters of belief, وجب عليه أن يتلقن الحق, he has to also accumulate or learn al-haq, the truth. And of course the way to do this is that you don't teach what is falsehood and then, no, you teach the truth first, but that's not enough. You have to warn from what is haram, what is evil, what is innovations in the deen. And again, this is different from one place to the other. Anything in the Quran and the Sunnah, right, you teach that regardless where the person is in. So even if a person is in a place where there's no shirk whatsoever, in a town that nobody commits shirk, nobody should teach them about shirk to avoid it? No, this is something that has to be taught from the very beginning. This is the way of the Quran. And the shaitan is working diligently to get people to commit shirk. So they have to learn the tawheed and also to be forbidden from shirk. But then when it comes to the specific bid'ah or specific innovations and so on, it depends from one environment to the other. We're talking about mandatory knowledge. We're not talking about the knowledge in general. So mandatory knowledge, if he's in a place where there's so much grave worshippers, right, then he has to learn that this is shirk, this is haram, right, and so on, and this is a priority. The same thing, كما لو كان تاجرا في بلد شاع فيه الربا وجب عليه أن يتعلم الحذر منه. The same thing if a person is a tajir, is a merchant, he buys and sells, and he gets into contracts and everything, and the place that he lives in, there's so much riba, almost in every transaction, then he has to learn. Or if he doesn't know the rulings of it, he has to ask a person of knowledge. And this is the case what we witness. Almost, I mean, it's not almost, you can say without exaggeration, every single contract, except, and the exceptions should not even be mentioned because that's what the norm is, has riba in it. You can rarely find a contract that you would sign. We're not talking about you go to the store, you give money and you get some groceries. This is a form of transaction. But almost every contract that you would sign, every time you put your name as a signature, most probably it has some clause of riba in it, right? So it doesn't matter if it's fine print or big print, it doesn't matter. It's riba is riba. So a person either has to have the knowledge, right? And it doesn't work just to ask the person on the other side, you think there's interest here, but no, it's easy, it's good, and then okay. That person is not a mufti, right? He's not a alim to give you the verdict. To him, it's fine, it's absolutely halal, zabiha, everything, right? But for you, you know that this is not permissible, or you don't know, then you have to ask a person of knowledge. Because things have become very complex. So it's not like you're making it difficult for yourself. We're supposed to be matters of ease. But if things changed, became the norm is what's haram, then it's not like you're making your religion difficult. No, things becomes very complex and people are sick and the haram becomes the norm. Then you have to make sure that you clean yourself and you make sure that you're away from haram by asking the people of knowledge. And as we said in matters of fiqh, the original ruling of transactions, that everything is halal, unless proven otherwise. You don't ask for a contract to prove that this contract is halal. No, it's the other way around. Prove that it's haram. Everything is halal, unless you prove that it's haram. So the person looking into the contract, he would say, oh yeah, it's haram because of this. Not that he has to prove that it's halal. You understand? But if most of the contracts that has haram in it, then you cannot just deal with it with you think, okay, I'll deal with any contract. And if I discovered, no, it doesn't work this way, because it becomes the norm. So you have to make sure that it's free from anything that is haram. The same thing with things that it becomes the norm. If the norm of, and I'm not making a judgment here or any fatwa or anything, but say for example, if the norm of the meat, and I'm not saying that this is the norm, I'm just saying if the norm, it's known that The stores, the meat there is all been suffocated and it just twisted its neck and things like this. If this is the norm, then you cannot just say, well, I can just take it and eat it because it's the people of the book. If you know that it's not been slaughtered and this is the norm of the people, then you can't eat. You cannot deal with the exception, right? The people of the book, they have to slaughter properly. Yes, it's permissible for us to eat. We should not, and some of the fatwa, when it says we should not ask. If it's people of the book, then we eat their meat, right? Yeah, we don't ask. You go to a place, if Jews or Christians, you eat their meat. But if you get to know that they're not slaughtering, then can you say, well, I should not ask? You didn't ask, but it's become known that they don't slaughter, for example. Then it's mandatory for you to know, even if it's a Muslim, and so on. And then, of course, with matters of belief, he has to believe in the matters of al-Iman, pillars of al-Iman, and the hereafter, and so on and so forth. This is fard ayn. This is mandatory knowledge for every person, that he has to have this knowledge. So there's a portion of the ilm which is mandatory. The person has to learn, and he just mentioned, gave an idea of how that is with matters of belief, with matters of things to be done, and things to be left with different situations and so on. Then he talks about fardul kifaya, or what is not mandatory, but a group of the Muslims, they have to have this knowledge. But we'll stop, inshallah, at this point. We'll continue next time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. And I hope that the question of the meat doesn't come up.